So Terry calls and has the duty bosun mate woke up. He comes up there. They tell him to move it. He moves it. He puts it where Ensign Mulligan wanted him to put it. And he goes back to bed. Not for very long. Hi folks, SC Closer here. Friends call me Vic. This is another episode of Vic Sea Stories and Tall Tales. This is part 2 of the infamous Ensign Mulligan story, where Ensign Mulligan sank the motor whaleboat. This was the cliffhanger. Okay, where we left off last time, the motor whaleboat had sank. I got called up because I was duty electrician. I go out on the pier. When they got the boat raised back up, I went and disconnected the batteries and all this stuff. By the time the casualty was over, it was at least an hour or so had gone by. And I went back up to the quarterdeck and I asked Terry, I said, Terry, what the hell happened? And Terry told me, and this is what Terry told me. Terry said he went on watch at 11:30 that night with Ensign Mulligan as the officer of the deck. Okay. When he got up there, he said one of the first things Ensign Mulligan did was he looked out at the boats out on the brow, and he's like, he says, I don't like the motor whaleboat being over here. He goes, I want the motor whaleboat moved. And Terry said he looked at Ensign Mulligan and said, sir, you want the motor whaleboat moved? And he says, yeah. He goes, why is the motor whaleboat over here anyway? And Terry said, he told him, said, well, sir, that's where they always put the motor whaleboat. And so Ensign Mulligan was like, well, who put the motor whaleboat there? He goes, well, the bosun mates put it there, sir. They're in charge of it. You know, he says, that's where they always put it. Ever since I've been on this ship, that's where they park those motor whaleboats when we got this side to the pier. And Ensign Mulligan says, well, I don't like it there. So Terry says, well, sir, what do you propose I do about that? And he says, I want you to call the duty bosun mate. I want you to wake him up and have him come down here and move that motor whaleboat. And he says, sir, you really want me to call the duty bosun mate, wake him up to move the motor whaleboat? And he says, yes, I want you to do that. And he's like, well, sir, where would you have me have him move it? And he says, I want it over there. And he said, why do you want it over there? He says, because I want to see it over there, and I don't want to see it over there. You call, wake up the duty bosun mate, and have him come move it. That's an order. So Terry calls and has the duty bosun mate woke up. He comes up there. They tell him to move it. He moves it. He puts it where Ensign Mulligan wanted him to put it. And he goes back to bed. Not for very long. So this is, where I came into the story. Because I remember in another episode, I told you about how the mid-watch, engineering rover or the ACNR watch, it depends. If you're at sea, it's the ACNR watch. If we were in port, it was the engineering rover. We were in port, so it was engineering rover. The mid-watch engineering rover would go down to the pump rooms, and there was generally water in the bilges, and they would call Damage Control Central and get permission and everything, which was the new procedures, and they would pump the water out of the pump rooms, okay? And it just happened every night at midnight. Common knowledge, the quarterdeck knew it. Ensign Mulligan should have known that, right? Everybody knows that. That's what's going to happen on the mid-watch. So they start pumping out that number 2 pump room sometime after midnight. And guess where Ensign Mulligan had them put the motor whaleboat? He had them put it right underneath the overboard discharge for the pump room. So basically they're pumping 125 PSI fire main pressure through there, and then whatever little bit of water they're sucking up out the bilges, and it's going straight into the motor whaleboat. I mean, you're talking hundreds of gallons of water pumping out of this thing. And it sank the motor whaleboat. And Terry happened to see it. He said he looked out there, And he saw that in water, and he said the motor wellboat was sinking. He started hollering. He says, "The motor wellboat's sinking, motor wellboat's sinking." He said, "Ensign Mulligan, you sank the motor wellboat." And that's when they called away the casualty. So Ensign Mulligan did it again. You'd think he'd learn. At this point, I think he was JG at this point, okay? He'd been on the ship for a while. He was the last one of his group to even make JG. But he wasn't catching on. This wasn't the last run-in I had with Ensign Mulligan, but this is the one that is the most unbelievable. This, so to me, this is my best Ensign Mulligan story, because he sank the motor wellboat in port while it was tied up. And Terry was there. Oh man, I hope y'all enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed talking about it. Y'all have a good one. See y'all later. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I got lots of these stories, and I want to keep doing them. I'm really enjoying doing it. So like and subscribe and share. Let all your friends know about it. And I hope you found it entertaining. Thank you.